Hello and welcome to DuckTales Character Comparison, where I compare a character from the original series to its 2017 counterpart. How are they the same? How are they different? And which version is better? In today's video, I'm going to talk about everyone's favorite adventurous miser, Scrooge McDuck. Appearance. Scrooge has the same basic appearance in both versions of DuckTales. They both wear a top hat, glasses, coat, spats, and they carry a cane. The difference between the two is the color of their clothes. While the Scrooge in the original series wore a blue coat with red accents, belt, and spats, the Scrooge in the reboot wears a red coat with black accents, belt, and spats. The 1987 Scrooge also has a button on his coat that seems to be missing from the reboot Scrooge. But then the reboot Scrooge has pockets on his coat. I guess he needs to carry his money somewhere. The top hat on the reboot Scrooge is taller than the original, and he has a bridge on his glasses. His whiskers are also a bit longer. One thing I didn't notice about the reboot Scrooge and many of the other characters is that they have pie eyes. For those of you who don't know, pie eyes are eyes that look like a slice has been taken out of it, hence the name. They were common in cartoon characters from the 20s and 30s, Mickey Mouse being a great example. This gives not only Scrooge, but the rest of the characters a retro feel. That describes the reboot Scrooge's appearance, retro. Fans of the comics know that he wore a red coat, so it's a nice callback to that. Personality. Much like their appearance, both Scrooges have the same personality traits. Both are adventurous, greedy, cheap, short-tempered, smart, love money, and family. At first there doesn't seem to be any difference between them, until you watch how they are introduced on their shows. The 87 Scrooge is swimming in his money, without a care in the world. When he has to pick up his nephews, we see him refuse to give money to the poor, take all the free samples of cheese, and refuse to tip the driver. Then he walked back home to save on car fare. Throughout the series, we see how cheap Scrooge is. Even moments when he's generous, he's still cheap. A great example of this is in the episode Scroogerello, where he announces he would take everyone to the finest hamburger stand in Duckburg. Webby asks, "Can we order fries?" In which Scrooge replies, "You can even order hamburgers." Seeing how excited everyone got at that news makes you wonder, what are they normally allowed to get? Scrooge in the reboot was also at his money bin, but he wasn't swimming in his money. He was listening to his board of directors talk about business. He takes no interest in what they have to say. In fact, he seems depressed. When he goes to his money, Scrooge just drops a few coins, instead of jumping in for a swim. Although he is still cheap, the reboot downplays that side of him. In fact, we get a lot of examples where he spends large sums of money. A great example of this is in the case of the Bombi. He spent a lot of money to keep him on an island. It was Louie who cut the funding. Why was Scrooge sad? And why isn't he as much a tightwad as he is in the 87 series? This leads to another similarity between the two. Their attitude towards family at the beginning. Both versions of Scrooge start off with a negative attitude towards family. They grudgingly agreed to take care of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Over time, we see them soften their attitude and learn the importance of family. The difference lies in the reason behind their negative attitude. The 87 Scrooge spent many years building a fortune on his own. The only interaction he seemed to have with a family member before taking care of his nephews was when he helped his Uncle Catfish win a riverboat race. His uncle cheated him out of a fortune, which might explain why he didn't like family. The only relatives Scrooge spoke fondly of were his parents. It was his father who gave him the advice to work smarter, not harder. Scrooge really took that advice to heart. He never realized how lonely his life is until his nephews came along. The reboot Scrooge also built his fortune on his own, but he still interacted with family, mostly Donald and Della, who often joined him on his adventures. The three of them were very close. What happened? Before Huey, Dewey, and Louie were hatched, Della decided she wanted to take a trip to the moon. Scrooge built the Spear of Selene as a gift for her after the boys are hatched. Della took it and ended up stranded on the moon. Scrooge did everything he could to find her. He even spent a lot of money from his money bin. Although the 87 Scrooge was willing to spend a fortune to help someone he cared about, the reboot Scrooge almost bankrupted himself to find Della. If it wasn't for his board of directors, he might have done so. Donald blamed him for what happened to Della, and the two weren't on speaking terms for the next decade. Scrooge's negative attitude towards family seems to be the result of the pain he's feeling over losing Della. As a result, he became more withdrawn from society. Role on the show. Scrooge is a complex character, and his role in DuckTales reflects that. You could even say he sets the tone for the show. DuckTales is an adventure show that explores the value of money and the importance of family. This describes Scrooge in a nutshell. He's an adventurer, businessman, and family man. Whenever something goes wrong, Scrooge is often the person people turn to for help. He's also a mentor for the kids, whether it's in business or adventure. Both the 87 and reboot Scrooge are important citizens of Duckburg, due to being the richest duck in the world. The difference is that the reboot Scrooge holds the deed to Duckburg, while the 87 Scrooge doesn't. This makes the reboot Scrooge a lot more powerful, since he owns the city. Another difference is their role in the community. While both are active citizens, the reboot Scrooge became a hermit after Della's disappearance. He doesn't become active again until he meets Huey, Dewey, and Louie. The 87 Scrooge always remained active, even before meeting the nephews. Speaking of which, another key difference is their role as family men. While both were left in charge of the nephews and ended up changed, the 87 Scrooge was someone who never knew what it was like to have a family. Whereas, the reboot Scrooge had Donald and Della. The nephews helped the 87 Scrooge learn what it means to have a family. They helped the reboot Scrooge rediscover the importance of family. Also, the 87 Scrooge was left in charge to take care of Huey, Dewey, and Louie, while Donald served in the Navy, meaning he was to be their guardian in the long term. Whereas, the reboot Scrooge was only going to babysit them for a couple hours. When Donald's houseboat caught fire, he and the nephews moved in with Scrooge. Now Scrooge is taking care of all four, rather than just Huey, Dewey, and Louie, like the 87 Scrooge. The final difference is the impact they had on Huey, Dewey, and Louie. We learned that the reboot Scrooge is the reason why they grew up without a mom. Because he built the Spear of Selene, Della ended up stuck on the moon. I don't want to beat up Scrooge too much for this, because the Spear of Selene was meant to be a gift after the boys were hatched, and he did everything he could to get her back. But they still ended up motherless as a result. The 87 DuckTales make no mention of Della, but I think it's safe to assume that Scrooge had nothing to do with her disappearance. Which one is better? It's a tie. I know this might be a bit of a cop-out, but I honestly love both versions of Scrooge. Both are funny and well-developed characters. The 87 Scrooge is the one I grew up with, and he is still fun to watch. The reboot Scrooge is great because he's a more fleshed out character. Both Scrooges work for the shows they're in, and since I like both shows, I happen to like both Scrooges. If you're disappointed that I didn't pick a winner, don't worry. There are plenty more DuckTales characters I'm going to talk about, and they're not all going to end in a tie. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later.